Make no bones about it, as things stand, the biggest threat facing the Tory party is wearing a turquoise tie. But despite the existential threat Nigel Farage and his party poses, it might surprise you to hear not all grassroots Tory members want him to disappear. In fact, many agree that he's been a hugely positive force in UK politics. Others, however, are less kind, and see Reform's potential election as nothing but an omnishambles in waiting. I chatted to a range of Tory members at this year's Conservative Party conference, currently underway in Manchester, to get their views on both Reform and its leader. Lachlan Bruce, 32, works in public affairs for a charity. He is a Conservative councillor in East Lothian. He certainly isn't alone in his assessment of Farage. He said, "I think that he's a chancer and he is not for me. As a politician, he is very impressive. He's the best politician out there by a mile. He connects, gets normal people and understands them. But he wouldn't be able to put a cabinet together." Paul Salvin, 43, is an energy trader who lives in Eston, Teesside, and is a Conservative councillor for Normanby. He's married with 2 children. He's got respect for the Reform leader and shares some of his views. He said, he gets politics and has spoken about the right things for the last 20 years. In terms of immigration, he's the one person in the country who has not been afraid to talk about it. If he does sort it out, he'll be in power for a decade. He's not scared to do it for fear of being called racist. He added, "It's not racist to say, my town is changing and I don't like it." Igraine Gray, 31, is a writer who lives in Loftus, North Yorkshire. She acknowledges Farage's assets but is concerned about his ability to deliver. She said, "He's very good at knowing how people think and knowing what they care about, but he doesn't have a grasp of the details and he manages to alienate everyone he works with." I think that Reform is a bit of a one-man band. Peter Grogan, 46, is a father of 5 and grandfather of 2. He's self-employed in the fire protection industry, lives in Redcar, and is a councillor in Kirkleatham. He said, he understands people. He gets public opinion quite early and better than most politicians. He seems to understand why people are angry and fights on that. However, his other policies apart from immigration are quite flimsy. David Dixon, 77, is a retired control systems engineer and he has been a Conservative councillor since 2019. He lives in Barbara and is married to Maxine, 71, who is also a Conservative parish councillor. They have 3 children, 2 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. He didn't mince his words when asked about Farage. He said, "I can't abide Nigel Farage. I see him as a showman with no substance." Stephen Ashford, 28, works in events. He's from Bristol but lives in London with his partner. He also acknowledges Farage's strengths. He said, "He is charismatic and there is no doubting that he has changed British politics." But he added, "There's a few issues. It's the uncertainty that Reform poses, as there is no coherence, for example, when it comes to economics. They are also untested. We're not doing the best on economics, but I think that we can get there and we are moving back to what we should be doing." Reform doesn't have the depth or the principles. One member, however, could be the latest on the Tory defection list if things within her own party don't change. Jane Rose, 64, is a retired lawyer, married with 3 children and 2 grandchildren. She lives in Beckenham, London. She spoke about the pull to Reform. She said, "They are more conservative than we are. They have got conservative policies. In fact, I found it difficult campaigning last election as I agreed with everything Reform said. I'm not saying that I will always be a Tory member, in fact they need to convince me to stay." Asked about the possibility of a Reform PM, her response was perhaps surprising. She said, "In many ways I do hope it's Farage." Quote,